Reports. All right, Mike.
All right, so for those of you who don't know, I'm Mike Deem, loan administrator for the township. It's kind of three topics I want to talk to you guys about, and go big, the things that we're working on in the township, looking at the whole township and then narrow it down to some things that are more lake related. We want to get your opinions on some things. One of the big things the planning commission is working on is creating an overlay district for what we consider our town center district. So the town center district, right, has been in the master plan for over 20 years. But we've never actually enacted what it talks about, right? It talks about having a planned development of mixed use, walkable community. But what does that mean? Right? And that's kind of what the planning commission has started the very first steps to working on. The next couple of days, we will be getting a survey to the printer. And that's going to get mailed out to all the residents in the township asking what type of uses you think would be appropriate for a town center district. And we'll have some explanation, on that survey what the town center, the intent is and whatnot. The planning commission is working on what we call an overlay district, right? And so what an overlay district is, it's additional rules over what the existing zoning for the underlying zoning is, right? Because we have the master plan, right, which is like the long range future, what uses could potentially be there, but then you have the zoning ordinance, which is what uses are currently allowed. Some of the zoning in the town center district, right, allow uses that, at least from the planning commission's perspective, aren't necessarily consistent with what you would expect in a town center. Right? Uses like gas stations and mechanic shops and auto bodies, industrial uses. Because again, right, the goal for the town center district has always been this walkable, mixed use district. The most recent Thompson Road Corridor plan kind of expanded the areas where the town center district was considered, right? Because originally it was just directly on Thompson Road. We held multiple meetings in 22, multiple meetings in 24. We had surveys and limited public input. Right, and the plan was based on the public input we had in discussion with the planning commission, discussions with the township board. I think the comments that we received most recently, right, would have been very helpful, 4 years ago. The plan would look very different than it does today. I think that the main concerns that we've heard from people, right, is that we've identified a lot of area along Torrey Road, on the east side of US 23 for town center development. The current zoning for those parcels are either R3s, which is single family residential, or agriculture. And what the overlay district is looking to do is actually restrict the uses that are currently allowed in the R3s in ag zone, right? To remove some of those more commercial uses that would be allowed. I would say that the planning commission and township board has heard the comments that the people have made most recently regarding the town center. And I firmly believe that when we update the plan in the next 2 years, we could start within the next 3 months. The worst case scenario is it's going to take 2 years to start. We're going to end up reverting that area back to medium density residential, right? The ideas that the planning commission discussed weren't necessarily commercial in nature, but they were residential in nature. And, I think one of the comments, I think it was Jeff that made, like, well, why are we going to encourage commercial development over there when that's not what the vision for that section was? Very valid comment, right? So I think in the long term, right, this area will be reverted back to medium density residential. But in the short term, right, because updating a master plan is not a quick fix, we want to develop this overlay zoning district. Right, because again, what it's going to do is restrict uses. It's not going to increase the amount of uses that would otherwise be allowed in there. So if your property in the town center was a zone R3 single family residential, which the majority of parcels along the lakes is, and the majority of parcels in that section specifically is, you'd be allowed to do a house. And that's essentially the extent of what would be allowed, right? There's limited commercial uses that are allowed in R3, based on the Zoning Enabling Act. There's like daycare uses, there's like a very limited neighborhood doctor's office category that's never been used. But so there are non-residential uses allowed in a residential zoning district, but the overlay district would remove those while we were in the process of updating the master plan. So I wanted to just like give an update about what the goals of that is, right? So the goal is not to increase the amount of uses that would be allowed currently in those areas. It's actually to remove uses, right? To uses that are more consistent with what a town center district should be. And we're finalizing that survey. We just need to get the survey out because every time we have a meeting, oh, we should do this, we should do that. But we're getting to the point where we're just going to get it out and get more input from the public. And the planning commission will hold public comments, public meetings on it. But that's the brief overlay or overview of what's been going on with the town center district. I can answer any questions you guys have because I know we've had a lot. And I would really like to just, clear the air so everyone's on the same page about what the goals of this is.
This is the property owners. I'm assuming you know that our lake is spring fed.
Yes.
There is a watershed district that's part of this. I can tell you with a great degree of certainty that one of our biggest concerns as an organization is harm to that watershed district. It has been, you can go back into your history, back to the 1970s with my now deceased parents that fought very hard with the township to maintain. It's not just how, and I respect what you're saying, but if we start messing with, this is my non-legal part of this, but we start messing with swamps around our lake, we got a problem.
It will get in our lakes.
It absolutely will. And we're supposed to be part of the watershed district for the Shiawassee River. And that goes into all of the lakes on the other side of the freeway. That's a big, big issue for this organization. And there are others. Traffic on Torrey Road. It's a big issue. But the first and foremost one is that our organization has been very stalwart on preserving our watershed, preserving all those things that feed into our lake. And there is a concern about what the township is doing and whether we blow right past that.
I don't know if you are aware specifically about the unique conditions of Lake Fenton for just about every other lake in this whole township.
Excuse me, George,
We can't hear you, George.
you gotta stand up.
This is,
Okay. I just was saying that I wanted to be sure that Mike understands, because a lot of times people say the word watershed and they think about a lake and they really can't correlate that lakes are totally different. All the rest of the lakes in this township, a large majority of them, if not all, don't have a turnover ratio that Lake Fenton has. If you got a sewage problem and they dump it into Panema Lake in 1 month's time, because the Shiawassee River comes in with such volume of water, it clears itself in just over a month. Clears all the stuff out of it. That's a turnover. Lake Fenton, 10+ years to turn over. If we get a spill in there, we got a problem for a long time. You don't know, even before you became here, how many meetings I sat in the road commission with John Daly and everyone else across there and all his engineers. Because when they paved Fenton Road, they made an expressway path for any kind of problem that comes between Fenton City and Reba, or whatever that road is, that can bring water now at expressway rate down with curbing right down to the drains and into that channel. We tried hard to get a retention pond to be built on the east side of Fenton Road to first give us one safety position that would save us from any kind of thing. Well, we got these drains that will catch stuff. Yeah, they catch stuff, but if it's an antifreeze spill on a truck over there, you don't catch it in the drain. It mixes with the water and it goes right on over the top of the drain basin. We are really concerned about that lake and every resident on here, for not only us, but all the people that use this lake, the fishermen and everyone else. We don't want that jeopardized. And that big blue spot you got there, okay, get on the other side of the expressway, the watershed goes the other way. Get just a little ways on the north side of Thompson Road, everything goes the other way, nothing comes to us. But that big blue spot you got there all comes back into Lake Fenton. And you'll hear probably Phyllis and our team here complaining about the other part that's on the planning commission meeting again this week. That's got a piece of property on the west side of Fenton Road over there that's also in our watershed that could be bringing water this way towards the lake. And it's a lot of swamp area. As Kurt said.
Oh, the rezoning,
The rezoning piece.
that's.
Of Macaulay.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, that's
but it's
good.
providing an opportunity to take a residential area and not make it commercial, but make it agricultural. That's what agricultural has, a lot of special rules and regulations, you know darn well. They can fertilize, they do a lot of extra stuff that we as a resident can't do legally. Okay, well, if that's the concern, when you even make a residential area in our watershed, even agricultural. Because that always comes back to a potential disaster.
Mhm.
So I think that's what Kurt started with, what we fight for a long time with, and I personally have done that in years past as president here, to try to keep that minimized, if not eliminated, if all possible. So that's why us as a team speak loudly about watershed. There's a lot of other concerns, as Kurt said, but that one is on the top of at least this group's list.
Yep.
Do you have something you want to say, Jim?
No.
Oh.
Save you a spot.
You had said that,
You don't wanna sit. I took a shower.
you were gonna try to, it takes a couple years to make some of the changes that you were talking about. Why can't those changes just be proposed now?
So there is, so couple answers, right? Legally, there is a process to go through, right? To update amendment. So in and of itself, that process takes a minimum of 6 months. And that's only if we're looking at a specific area. I think we're getting to the point where we need to look at the township as a whole, right? Because state law requires we do every 5 years, right? It was updated in 24. So we're about halfway through, but you know, things are changing faster than I think anyone really anticipated, right? And when you start seeing these factors, that's when it's a good idea to start opening up the master plan. I think that from the comments that we've heard, right, we need to do a better job with public participation, right? And to have good public participation, it can't be a fast process, right? Because just alone getting the word out, you know, even today, right? If you wanted to mail out a notice, right? The mail is so incredibly slow. By the time we get notices out to people, meetings have passed. Even if we send them out 15 days in advance, right? So we need everything is going to take more time than, you know, a fast fix.
Is the township board resistant
No,
that it needs to take more time? Instead, the sense, the impression is that there's a rush. Oh, we got to get this passed.
Yeah.
Why? And that's the concern that George brought up.
right.
If you want to go back in old history, go back and look at something called the Donner Drain. And the Donner Drain is a lot of what George is talking about. It was in the 70s and early 80s, where a drain from the city of Fenton came out and dumped into the south end of the lake. And we were getting all sorts of poison. And as an organization, we fought with the township and with the city of Fenton and finally got that damn thing shut off. And it's an issue. We don't want, you know, you put aside Fenton Farms, okay? There's a lot of swampland between Fenton Farms and Thompson Road.
Mhm.
Tons of it. That's all watershed that comes into our lake. All of it. And then you have the filters of the swamps that drain into what Matt does for us and Jim has done before and Dan has done. You know, we monitor the flow of the water in and out of our lake. Because it's a concern. There's property values on this lake that are pretty high. That will take an absolute nosedive if word gets out that some poisons got into our water. That's the concern. And we don't want people to say, oh, well, progress. We're not against progress. It's safety.
Looking at the map.
It's okay.
I guess part of the issues that I have anyways is the board meetings I've sat at, many of the board members, first of all, I don't understand, and I'd love to know who is pushing to keep expanding this master plan to more and more use areas. And when you say it's restricting the use areas, that's proven to be false. You just proved that false over the last 3 meetings with Miller, where if you can get what Miller just did and get this turned brown where he was, that made it so you 100% could not turn down his zoning application to switch from ag to that. So that was proven, it's all on recording. So that is the case study for what is going on in the rest of the township. So you then try to make this, what's residential, into this town center district, which I would like to know who's pushing that.
All right, so this area, right, this entire parcel, right, that goes down like this, has been zoned for town center for at least 20 years.
So why are they making it bigger?
So this area has been this way.
All the way down?
That's where the property ends.
That whole piece of there
That's-
is out of our water.
That's a planned unit development that was done that way.
Well, how about this?
So that was part of the discussion that we've had with.
But
public
they
meetings.
added this, right?
Correct.
So somebody is influencing the members on the board to expand bigger. So somebody wants
It was talking
high
about this.
density residential, which obviously is trying to get apartments, which is a good chance they're trying to get staff to have a place to live. But for the board to sit here and say, well, us turning this blue is actually restricting use, is a lot.
No, that's not what I said.
I
Talking
didn't
about,
say you, I said people on the board said it's restricting the use.
so we're talking about we're talking about two different things.
Talking about the overlay,
Overlay zone, right, is restricting the uses that would be allowed in there.
only until someone buys that piece and asks for an application, or if somebody asks for a rezoning application, to then utilize those new things. And I asked John Tucker about that 5 times in the meeting. And he simply said, no, 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 no. He didn't lie. Because his attorney, he'll tell you that 5 or 6 times, but beyond that,
You will.
he didn't lie. But he didn't bother, you know, he said at the beginning of the meeting, I am against growth. And you can't stop growth. Number one, he's wrong, because you can choose every 5 years not to change your master plan. You can hold it. You don't have to expand it. No one on that board bothered telling anybody here, hey, actually, you can stop growth. You can hold your master plan as is. But Mark, I think it's Mark Gopel, proved that in the last meeting, because he asked those questions that I asked you and you didn't answer, and I emailed and you still didn't answer. Mark Gopel asked him on record and said, if all the restaurant zoning land in your township is already occupied and you want to build a new restaurant, do you have to approve it? No. Do you have to approve it if there's overlay for it? Yes. Do you have to expand your overlay? No. So it's been said, you can stop growth if you want to stop growth, but nobody on the board is willing to say that. So somebody or many people on the board are pushing for growth. And it's very upsetting and quite frankly makes me mad. Especially when somebody on the board would say, this is reducing the uses. If that's not talking out of both sides of your mouth, I don't know what is. Because yes, if you're reading black and white, is this expanding this use on this R2? No. But if I own this R2 and then I go ask for a zoning application change, and you have to approve it, that's expanding use by multiple steps. Yes, you have to take some steps, but they don't bother telling the public that. And I have a huge problem with that, so I'll let that beehive start and through the open.
So if it goes back to medium density residential, are you okay with that?
What does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
That's R3 single family residential, that's what the zoning for all the properties around the lake box.
Well,
And that's what
it's
Okay, but are you-
it's complicated, but if this area right here is currently R3, I personally, without taking much more knowledge and time to study the situation, my jump to it answer would be yeah, leave it that, because you can't, to my knowledge, can't put a restaurant on that. You can't put entertainment on that. You can't put high density residential on that. So in my simple mind, that means it's less than what they're proposing. And my simple mind says, let's do less.
Well, I feel
As well as not letting them take the watershed areas.
Yeah,
And-
that's the
and-
part of it. That's the additional part of it.
They have to keep the
Well,
watershed.
if somebody, okay, let's go conspiracy theory all the way to the other end of the moon here. If they flip this to town center, the golf course owner says, I'm not selling. Well, guess what? If the golf course, and I don't know value, if you own the golf course, it's been in your family for 50 years or 5 generations, whatever. It's valued at $10 million. And I come to you with a suitcase with $50 million in it, saying, why don't you walk away? How many people in this country don't take the suitcase? Everyone takes it.
Yep.
And they've proved with the meetings that once that sells, now you can do a big ass development through that whole thing, have high rise, multi-family or high density residential. And guess what? The swamps that are the filters can 100% be filled in.
Yes.
It costs money, and it costs a minimum of $100,000 an acre to buy wetland banks. But if somebody buys this property, whether it's farm field or the golf course, and has the $50 million to give you, I guarantee you they have the $100,000 an acre to buy the wetland banks and fill that wetland and create a wetland in Livingston County or wherever else it may be to get the permit to get built what they want. There goes your fill.
I think that's what we're against.
Absolutely.
Even with R3, is there any kind of restriction on like how many, what kind of houses, whatever? They're gonna be like 400 houses on like postage stamp lots. I mean, like, is there any kind of restriction for that?
So under an R3 zoning district, let's just say it's a 100-acre parcel, because that makes the math a little bit easier. 50% open space, right? So now you're down to 50%. You can get up to 1.5 units per acre, right? So you're looking at 150 units for 100, acre parcel, right? But you take out wetlands. Wetlands don't count, right? So if it's a 100-acre parcel, there's 10 acres of wetlands. You have a 90-acre parcel, right? If there's other encumbrances to the property, right? The undevelopable land is taken out of that, right? So the number you're starting with. Lot size for an open space development, minimum lot size is 12,000 square feet. Which again is larger than most of the lake lots. But at 50% open space, if they only provide 25% open space, then they get 1.25 units per acre, right? And you have to provide a minimum of 20% open space to get the bonuses. So if you don't provide 20% open space, you are, if water and sewer are available, you can have 20,000 square foot lots. If they're not available, it's an acre lot.
And it's available, right? Water and sewer is available on this lot.
Depends, maybe,
I just was wondering if they.
Did I miss I thought I'd been driving through construction down Torrey Road to put in sewer.
well, it depends
And
on
water.
but it depends on which lots they are, right? Because if you're right, if they're rightly on Torrey Road, yes. That agricultural parcel that's behind everything, it does not currently have water or sewer.
But you can pull it from the road.
You could, and that's why it depends.
So that's a lot of houses.
Same time, right, we look at how are they being accessed? You know, what capacity does Torrey Road have for more, you know, for more homes? Right now, the best example we can give of a recent example is the Ward Farm on Ralston and Ripley Road, right? That property is zoned agriculture. They came in with a rezoning request to R3. And it was denied because we didn't have adequate utilities at the time. Now, sewer has been expanded in that area of the township. So the sewer capacity issues that that parcel had are going away. We're gonna see another allocation for that. But they do look at the utilities that are available, the road capacity that's available, and if those aren't present, then it doesn't meet the conditions for a rezoning.
And you heard of some. And Mike, you did here, and I thought Chris Belcher did an excellent job of reading the letter that he's put out in concern representing the kids, the family district. That blue thing comes right up to and butts up against the entire school's property.
Yeah, I've had multiple meetings with Chris since that meeting.
Okay.
We've sat down and we've talked about things.
So just another whole issue besides watershed, besides traffic, he's representing us and then many of us that still have kids or grandkids in the area. But that's another issue that they're very highly concerned about because of the close proximity that anything could be right up the butts up against the property of the school. I know that's why we put the water down Torrey Road, was to get the water to the schools, to get out of the arsenic thing, all that good stuff. But now to add the opportunity for something other than just regular family homes to border around that school, if in fact the golf course sold or anything else, and we have a commercial district, whatever you want to call it, right up against the school system, he's against, and I'm glad he is because I would have said the same thing. So that's another major issue that I think the people in the township, including the school board, is concerned about.
And I would say those comments have been heard, right? Again, you know, had we received these comments back in 22, right? The plan would definitely look different than it does today, right? And that's, you know, it's not unique to Fenton Township.
Well, I think what fooled most people, including myself, back in those days, and you started out the presentation, I think, or talking here just by saying that. Most of everybody that heard those words thought it was Thompson Road and Thompson Road North. Okay, many of us put blinders on from that day forward. We didn't want to hear anymore. We didn't think we needed to, earplugs in, whatever you want to call it. And now we find out that we should have listened a little louder because there was the opportunity for us to speak back then, but we didn't understand it. Now this group of people and a lot of other township representatives are still on the planning commission, and that was just with the less than a 24-hour notice. You talked about a long time. Those people all came within a 24-hour notice of some great people putting out a communication about it because now they're aware. Where they weren't aware, just like me, I got fooled. I thought everything, when you guys talked Thompson Road Corridor, I always thought it was Thompson Road North. Because that was what we fought for, to keep the watershed. If you keep it on the north side or the west side of the expressway, you can build all the hell you want from a watershed standpoint, okay?
What about the rumors of the truck stop?
So that is what's actually driving, right? The concept for the town center overlay. The Loves made a presentation, right? They were looking to purchase the old driving range parcel on the south side of Thompson Road, just west of 23. I think everyone can agree Loves isn't what you would envision for a town center.
Nope.
And that's what the planning commission explained to them. The other side of that story, right, is that the property is zoned C3. Well, it's permitted, it's a special use permit in the C3 zoning district. So the fact that it doesn't comply with the master plan, right, that's the battle the township would have to take, right? There are uses in the C3 zoning district that are permitted, that are inconsistent with town center district. And so the thought was, let's get an overlay district in place while we work out more of the details. We do have a gas station that has preliminary site plan approval on the north side of Thompson Road, west of US 23, where the storage units are. vacant parcel there. That area has been identified for highway service for 20 years, and it's consistent with that use. South side isn't.
That one approved yet for that,
They have preliminary site plan approval.
so that's a truck stop on the north side.
Well, it's a gas station that also has 6 diesel pumps.
But it has space for 90 trucks.
Sure.
Truck stop.
Well, I think a truck stop service is more than just 6 at a time.
Yeah, but it's 90 semis parking spaces permitted. And they can't be there over 24 hours, but generally speaking, trucking companies do not park for over 24 hours because trucks don't make money park.
Regardless from a zoning perspective, right, with the zoning district that it is, that's an allowed use. It's not that. The area is identified as highway service, right? It's not identified as town center, and it's in an industrial area. If, that is the type of area that you'd want that type of use of that type of uses.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be too forceful and too angry, but this situation's definitely upset me, so if I came across too strong, I apologize to you and the board. But the truth of the matter is when a resident that lives here asks if there's a truck stop going in, and then the board or whoever says it's a gas station, well, I mean, now we're doing lawyer speak. Is it words or is it not? Because if there's spaces provided on a site plan for 90 semi trucks, that's what most residents that might not understand business difference between a gas station and a truck stop would consider a truck stop. And it's hidden from the public. And the public is obviously, as you see through all the Facebook crap that's going on in the world, the public's sick of it. And it's coming to a head.
It's half truths and words missing.
Well, I don't think it's a trust issue. I understand your thoughts. It's not the same as a Lowe's, it's not the same as a Buc-ee's.
What is the difference? I'm not being mean, but what is the difference? I've traveled the country for many years with my CDL,
so
and I stopped at all of them equally.
Well, so there's definitely different models that Love's has, right, where it's more commuter based versus truck based. Right, and so who's the majority of the customer servicing? Right, and I always say that it's very obvious the customer is commuter based, it's not.
A TA is commuter based.
Yes. This model is.
It's spaces though, it's 90 truck spaces and. It is what it is, it's already approved and done, but I just want people to know. It's approved and done. And if you can park 90 semi trucks there, it's pretty sizable. I haven't counted spaces at what I'm gonna call a truck stop at Mount Morris Road. Which, sure, it services auto and trucks. Heavily, I mean, it's a gas station, it's a truck station, but it's truck stop. And I would be surprised if there's 90 spaces at the one at Mount Morris and 75.
I was trying to find the post that was put out when we had that really large group of residents that showed up. There was someone who put a post on the next day that said that we didn't understand what the zoning was trying to be for R3, that they were actually trying to limit it. Do you know what that was? Do you remember that? Do you guys remember?
That's been John's position, that he's actually trying to help us with this town center zoning.
John Tucker?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's the concept of an overlay zoning district, right? It's that you maintain the uses that are allowed currently. And then you remove additional uses from them. And so the goal is not to add uses to those districts, but it's removing uses from them.
So the list that was in the package of what the R3 is, there were things in that were going to be removed, is what that
Yes.
media, okay. So is there a new package then that shows the ones that want to be removed?
Well, so that's part of the survey that we're gonna be sending. out,
Okay.
Right, to try and get more public input on that. So, no, not at this point.
Okay.
But I do see ways to make it clear as to what the intent is. From a procedural standpoint, it was the introduction, right? Step one, like, just begin the discussion, right? And get to that point where we can present something, and obviously. Obviously, that's just, was step one, right? So there's no ordinance to talk about, there's no meat to it yet, right? Because it's what direction do we want to go? And that's, so we can get to the point where we could create a discussion draft to start taking comments, and then start revising it off of that.
Okay. Cause we can help you get people at those meetings.
Sure.
Well, yeah, so, yeah,
Maybe even one or two lawyers.
maybe 1 or 2 lawyers too,
we need.
so.
I have a question for Mike. Mike, do we have any assurances with Miller Industries that if they were to have a problem that might affect the watershed or cause a problem with Lake Fenton, that they are they required to make us aware of that? What's the reporting? How do we have any assurances? And what caught my eye today in the paper when I was reading it is now they're going, if I understand it right, they're building another very large structure to process metals. So they do something with metals and what's there right now, right? But this processing center, that seems to me, would involve a lot of chemicals and with metals and everything. It just seems to me like that's kind of doubling up the concern quite a bit to me. But nevertheless, do we have anything like that?
So there is a response plan they file with the fire chief. The fire chief reviews and inspects as part of his inspection prior to C of O. So specific notification to I don't know the answer, like if there's a specific notification to lake property owners if there's something going on. It's just something I can look into and have an answer for you though.
Okay. Yeah, because I would imagine, I mean, they're subject to all the same regulations the EPA has out there, and
Yes.
I'm sure the state of Michigan has some as well. So I'd just be curious about that.
Yeah, I don't know what notification outside of the agencies, what kind of requirement there is for that.
Okay, thank you.
Is Miller Industries required to have their own, and this is a bad term, but like a disaster plan for exactly what Pat just talked about, to keep poisons, for lack of a better term, north of Thompson Road and away from our watershed?
They're required to have a plan for any hazardous material and every hazardous material that they may or may not, that they may have on the site. And that's reviewed by the fire chief.
Mike, several questions. Seems like this ball got rolling a long time ago and not too many people knew where it was headed. And now we're trying to justify what we're doing. This overlay, is that something somewhat new? Because I was on the planning commission for 14 years, never heard of one.
Overlook, like specifically the town center overlay
Yes,
district
yeah.
was first introduced in 2009. And for whatever reason, it just never moved forward.
Okay.
So it's been part of the recommendations in the master plan for 17 years.
Well, the dot that was never used. The dot on the map that was never used.
Well, there was an ordinance.
Township.
Well, there was an actual draft ordinance that was created. That talked about the uses, talked about design criteria, and for whatever reason, it never moved forward. Right? I think that there was probably a lot of thought, like, we can always do it tomorrow. And until water came, that was probably right. And now water's here, we're trying to stay ahead of things and bringing up you know, these ideas that have been in the plans for, 15, 20 years. Trying to actually enact plans, right?
Mike, also, are you doing the survey?
Yep.
I hate to say this to you, but I kind of have a concern about the survey we did on the short-term rentals. You came out with, oh, it's about a 50-50, 50% want it, 50% don't want it. Well, one of the questions in the survey was, would it be okay in R3 with restrictions? Well, one of the restrictions was to not have them in R3. So I thought that was somewhat misleading. So I'm a little concerned that doesn't happen again. Are you an expert in surveys or?
I am not an expert in surveys,
Well, that's good to know.
so
And I just had one other thing I want to bring up. I heard the roundabout's going to solve all the traffic on the 2-lane expressway.
it's going to improve
Bridge.
traffic.
I've heard that before, but roundabouts are traffic calming. And I happened to spend some time in Florida, and Sarasota put in 4 roundabouts in about every 2 or 3 blocks. Where traffic would get slowed down sometimes, it's always slowed down. It's so calm there, can't hardly get through there. So I have some real concerns about who's saying that's gonna solve everything.
So that's MDOT, right? This is their new standard for
And I wonder how much.
going forward.
Is there study based on the current traffic flow, or is there study saying that after these roundabouts, it'll deal with all the future and expanded traffic, some new buildings, new truck stops, new
Based on
residential?
maximum build out over the next 30 years.
And then last question, and I know it's kind of been brought up, but who's pushing this? It just seems like this, all of a sudden we got slammed with this. And it didn't just happen overnight. Somebody's driving this.
Well, I think that's where the disconnect is, right? Is that this hasn't been happening overnight. Like, since the water line was approved, we have constantly been planning, constantly trying to get the word out, trying to have people show up to meetings, trying to provide input, right? This is building on plans that have been in place for over 20 years. This is nothing, the only expansion, right? The only new stuff, right, is this area along Torrey Road, right? And that was based on water expansion. Again, had we had these comments at these meetings that we put word out in the paper, we put stuff on social media, we had surveys, and had we had these comments, the plan would look very different than what it looks like now.
That's
So how do we get it back to where it needs to be?
Well,
Especially that blue section.
Right.
That's, do that quick.
we are going to be updating the master plan, right? The question is, how fast can we start that process?
How do we avoid development in the meantime? I'm sorry, Mark. How do we avoid the development in the meantime that we're all worried about?
We develop this overlay zoning district, because that's going to address the uses that are allowed currently in those zoning districts. I am not concerned about a rezoning attempt on that parcels, on those parcels on Torrey Road, because Torrey Road cannot handle additional traffic. So unless someone's coming in and going to widen Torrey Road, there's not gonna be any more traffic from those parcels going on the Torrey Road.
There's gonna be more traffic because of the expansion.
sections?
Sorry.
Whose idea was it to do the overlay in that section?
It was discussion during the planning commission's open houses, essentially following the water line. Identifying the fact that US 23 is there, right? That there may be opportunities for access from Thompson Road. And that there is possibilities for different types of development opportunities. And that's the thought process behind it. It's not like someone came in and said, I want to do this, or we need to do that.
What's the overlay right now in the area between Torrey Road and 23?
There is no overlay.
So if there's no overlay and it's zoned R3, so
Correct. And
then why is somebody think it's even a conceivable good idea to add the overlay into that area, especially if you think it's not feasible because of the issues?
what the overlay for an R3 zoning district, right? It's going to remove some uses from it, right? You could have like a daycare, right? And there's like some limited commercial opportunities that you could have under an R3 zoning district that we're looking to remove. Right, there's uses, there's agricultural uses in an agricultural zoning district that we're looking to remove. We're not looking to add commercial uses to those parcels.
But inadvertently you are. I'm so confused and don't understand. Because if this currently doesn't have an overlay and it's currently R3. And currently the big bad uses of it are a daycare. Then how is that not better than what they're trying to propose? Town center, which have restaurants, entertainment, high density residential, blah, blah, like. Because that is more, yeah, you might reduce the daycare out of there, but who cares about somebody watching 20 kids in their house? No one. For the most part, I can't speak for everyone in the town,
Well, we're not looking to add a restaurant to the R3 zoning district. We're not looking to add
until somebody asks for the application.
Then it's a rezoning request.
Exactly.
Right, but then we look at the other factors.
But if you don't color that blue,
okay,
but no one can ask for that.
It is blue today.
That's what I'm asking.
We have to go through a process to get that changed. That's what we're talking about.
That's what I'm asking. What is it right now?
Right now, the future land use plan has it as town center.
Between Torrey Road and
Correct.
23.
I think the comments that we've heard, I feel fairly confident that it is going to get changed to medium density residential.
What color would that have been before?
The same as beige.
Okay,
The same
so
as-
your plan is going back to that.
That would be the intent.
But you're saying right now this is town center and it has been since what?
Since 22.
Okay, and that's, I guess, what I'm getting at.
This again was followed
So it's not that you're trying to make a town center in 2026. They already voted to make a town center in 2022.
Right.
So
Has the township
now
gotten
I'm
the
up to speed.
applications?
That's the confusion.
Township has had no discussions, no applications. No, what we've had is we had Loves come in with a concept plan for the opposite side on a C3 parcel. And the argument is parcel is on C3. We don't care what the master plan is. We're going to make the application to deny us and then go to court. We have the overlay district in place. We can remove those uses while we work on the larger plan.
So who represents the township when that goes to court? Is that what Jack does?
We have liability insurance attorneys that handle.
So somebody other than Jack?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a question, because you mentioned that Torrey Road would not right now be able to handle all the extra traffic, so that would help limit the uses of those parcels. But I think I read that Miller Industries got around some of that because they put an access road from Thompson Road into their property, where then they were not going to use Thompson Road. So, right, yeah, so they didn't have to come down Torrey Road to go to Ray Road. They put that so would stop somebody from putting an access road then from Torrey Road into this like area to then avoid the.
Well, it'd have to come off Thompson.
Well, that's Thompson,
Okay.
that's what I mean, that's what I mean to act to like not, because you said we couldn't do that because Torrey Road couldn't handle the traffic, which makes sense, except Miller Industries already created a pathway where they didn't have to use Torrey Road, so what would keep somebody from creating a pathway to not have to use Torrey Road to access that area?
That is a potential option.
You could come south from Thompson Road into the back way.
But
Where that house used to be.
But there's also the wetlands there, right? And the wetlands present a barrier. So there is a limited opportunity where that is found. Limited, right? If someone was motivated enough, potentially.
So Mike, let me ask you, I just heard you say that you think and would probably say it would go back to a light blue and R3 district on that one section right there.
Like beach.
How do we, sure,
Beige.
light beige, whatever the color is. How do we as a group or as any township resident assure that that takes place? Who is the party or group that makes that determination?
So planning commission will make a recommendation to the township board, and township board will final.
So right now, they have to, in order to remove it, the planning commission has to come forward eventually with a proposal to pull that blue and change it back to the R3.
Correct.
Okay. So we have to work through the planning commission people to make sure that that's gets done.
So-
And supports the comment you just made that you think it should say, go back to R3.
Yes, I will make that known at every planning commission meeting we have when we talk about this.
Okay.
So it's a master plan review, right? My hesitation, right, is that where we are in our political cycle. Right, townships are on presidential election, right, so our next election is 28. We're halfway through 26, right? RFP minimum 3 months so that we can get the word out, get bids back. A month or two to make a decision. All right, so we're at 27. Conceptually, right? A master plan with public input would be an excellent opportunity for the new board in 28 to have them, be part of that process, right? If there is conceptually, right? I'm not saying there should be or is or whatever, but if there's changes, right? It's one thing to have an old board put a plan in place. Rarely when people get voted out are the people who were voted in have the same point of view, right? So we're kind of in this little no man's.
You have 2 years.
So-
The new board wouldn't come in until 29, right? The election would be
Right.
November of 28.
Yeah.
You have 2 years.
Vince Lorraine, a number of us have been going to the meetings. And now that he has seen the participation from the community, he also agrees with what Mike just said. That we need to go back and look at the master plan.
And I think that's probably good. We have not had a meeting, right, where we've had an opportunity to talk about this. I would say that we're not gonna wait 2 years, right? It's gonna be a lot sooner than that. I can't give you time, right? Because every decision informs our next steps, right? I think that there's enough changes going on, enough increased public participation that we need to look at the master plan.
That's how he made it sound. One of the about too is the survey participation, that people do not look or return those surveys. If you put together a survey and then we help you with the 800 residents that are on our lake, we have 4 directors in every single district, and we will go door to door and right, you guys, we will make sure that those people send those back or they give them to us.
I like to think that within the past 6 months, we've tried to strengthen our connections. We haven't been doing in the past. We're sitting down with the school more often than we had in the past. You guys attend meetings that you haven't attended, previously. We've created the Parks and Rec Board, right? That gets the various groups of recreation together, where before everyone was acting independently of each other. All these different, different processes that we're trying to do, are stemming from previous plans, and they're going to inform our decisions going forward. And as we get more information, it's becoming obvious that we need to look at this plan a lot sooner than we probably would have otherwise.
Well, we'll help get the word out as to what we want to do.
I think you've seen that we're pretty proactive.
No, look, and I appreciate it, right? But at the same time, how long you guys been together, right? And I've been here for 7 years, and it's only been the past couple of months that I've started seeing you guys at meetings.
Yep.
Like that's not that's well, all right, Mark. I've seen you at meetings, but
And we just did short-term rentals. I mean, that was us.
As an organization, we've been around since 1965, right? And we're multi-generational.
We keep an eye, and then when things come up that we care about, we jump in. I would say this group was instrumental in the weeds, instrumental in the goose and ducks. In fact, super instrumental in the weeds. We started it. So yeah, we pick and choose. We pretty much leave you guys alone, but we watch.
Well, I have some other topics I want to talk to you guys.
Yeah, we have a couple other things.
That are probably more relevant to your association.
Okay,
So the planning commission is reviewing side yard setbacks and lot coverage. And we're looking at side yard setbacks on narrow lots that are 60 feet wide or less. Right now, the minimum setback is 5 feet. And, we've had some concerns brought up. And so the concern is how to access the back of your lot, right? How do you get lawnmowers down the side? How about fire safety and, being good neighbors and whatnot? And then the other part of that discussion is what should be included in lot coverage. The most affected lots are the lots around the lake, right? Because those are the old lots. Those are all the legal non-conforming lots. None of those lots, the majority of the lots just wouldn't exist today unless they had 100 feet of frontage. So I think it's important for us to get your opinions on what those setbacks should be. One thing the planning commission is looking at is a minimum of 5. Both sides would have to combine to at least be 15, and then a minimum of 15 feet between structures. Right? So if you have a house that's 5 foot, it would have to be 10 feet. Kind of mirrors some of our other zoning districts. But it is a big change, right? It's going to make a lot of houses legal non-conforming. So I guess we're interested in hearing your opinions on the issues you had with side yard setbacks, and if you have any suggestions relating to that.
To make the side setbacks larger in total somehow, one way or the
Yes.
other. So we would put potential properties that exist today in violation of other than to be grandfathered in.
Correct.
So the sale of the property, if it was thought to be a tear down and build up, they'd have to then come back with meeting the new restriction.
That's correct.
So is it 10 feet currently? Or 5 feet currently?
5 feet curve.
To what?
For 60-foot wide lots or less. So if you are 65 feet, then it's 10 feet.
Would you consider any possible incentives? I'm on Cuswago. It started off with 40-foot wide lots. There's a house for sale on there. I don't know if I got an offer on it, but it would, have the 5-foot setbacks. Now, if the owners on each side bought that, tore it down, and added 20 foot to their existing 40-foot lot, you'd have 60, which would be 50% bigger than what they have.
Sure.
I would think, there should be incentive to do that.
So what would be an incentive?
Maybe a tax break or something, a 10-year tax break or something that they don't, just to incentivize people to do that. I happen to do that a long time ago. There used to be a house in between mine with both added on, made it more valuable properties. And I think that should have been worth something to somebody that's in that position to make a better lake situation, more valuable property. I think it's something to look at. And we had a lake zoning years ago where we had a larger setback off the lake. And I wish I had that now. I don't have much of a setback off the lake, but now we've been looking at different landscaping issues and stuff to try to solve some of the E. coli issues the waterfowl cause. And I don't know, might want to look at pushing them back a little bit.
So what are your thoughts on what Mike is asking? Does have any thoughts on
Are
it?
you trying to change it from what to what?
So right now it's 5 feet for lots that are 60 feet wide or less. So the goal would be minimum of 5, both sides of it have to be at least 15. And then a minimum distance between houses of 15 feet.
Isn't that make some lots unbuildable? Like if somebody needs-
Well, I would make, it would mean they'd have to be smaller houses.
So if you.
Fair.
40 foot lots and 20 foot lighthouse, whatever.
Right.
And
What about the lakeside setback?
So we'll talk about that in a second.
Aha,
So what's that? What was that found?
So lakeside setbacks, right? This is just something that I would like to throw out there for discussion purposes. Nobody but me has brought this up. When I look at the variances that are granted by the zoning board. Typically what we see, right, is house for house, right? And the houses meet the sightline setback, right? Because the way we define that setback, as you guys know, is the foundation of the house. But that also includes the deck is supposed to meet that sightline. Right, so if your houses are all in line, your neighbors have their decks, you can't build a deck because the deck would be in the sightline. My thought is that, this is my opinion, and again, this was just a comment I threw out there, and I probably should have kept my mouth shut. But it seems to me that the sightline should be house to house, deck to deck, right? And then, because that's where what's going in front of the zoning board, right? It's like my house lines up, but my deck is in violation of the site. But obviously, right, you also have concerns about closeness to the lake. That's something that I'd like, that's again, right, before I even think about, having discussions on it, I want to hear what you guys thought about, that concept. If there's any merit to it, or if it's just move on and don't even waste your breath.
The only issue I have right immediately off thought is gonna go backwards of probably everyone's opinion. I think the lake has already passed the point of gentrification, but if you force it bigger, the chances of my kids or other people's kids, grandkids ever being able to live here gets less and less and less. And yes, if I had the means to buy two houses, knock them both down and have 200 feet of frontage and not care about what the property taxes were, sign me up. But realistically, the more and more and more that gets pushed, it gets to the point where no one can afford to live here. Other than the bad word, the 1%. But I mean, that's opposite of what probably anybody would ever think I would ever say, but there's something to be thought about there.
What spurred your thought process about the setbacks in the front for the decks? Like why did that?
So the decks, that's just something I've noticed. The deck, that's just something one of the things of the planet, right? You look at what variances you have, right? And if you're granting the same type of variance over and over again, you should probably change the ordinance. But again, right, not the hill I want to die on, right? If I'm gonna get yelled at, it's gonna be for something different. The side yard setback, we had a resident bring that request up to the board multiple times where he has had a horrible experience with his neighbor. Where a builder is ignoring the property lines and build a pool without a permit, equipment going down, trespassing, and it's a 5-foot setback, right? And he can't get the equipment down. We should probably look at it. So that's what's pushing that discussion, right?
The solution is that
That's just not one. I mean, there have been many people over time that have lost neighbors because there's just not enough room to get, people want to do something on the lakeside and can't get down there. Well, they're going on somebody else's property.
the solution to that we've had to deal with for 30 years of doing work on the lake is either A, sell your house, which is unfortunate. I sold my house on Pine Lake because of the neighbors. Yeah, it again goes against what I just said, but either have to be able to afford enough space to isolate yourself or deal with it. If you can't buy the neighbor's house, then you can't tell the neighbor what to do. But so there's some of that. But 9 times out of 10, every single lake house we work on, especially on this lake, you have one neighbor that is the Antichrist, and you have one neighbor that is the best friend. Often you have 2 Antichrists. Almost never do you have 2 best friends. And you get written permission from the neighbor to get on their property, essentially destroy their property and put their property back together when we're done. And it's written, it's signed, it's agreement. If you can't get that, then you may have to carry 5-gallon buckets or wheelbarrows or hire a barge. So for one person living next to the pizza man to make everyone else on the entire lake change, that's the type of stuff. What he's talking about is on Torrey Road, right next to the guy that owns Enzo's. The person to the north, I'm sure, is the one that put in the complaint. And that's the type of stuff with government that just drives me crazy. You have one person going to dictate 850 other people's lives.
Is there any thought to limiting buildable lot size? Because, well, somewhat dovetailing off of what Jeff is talking about, you know, I know I'm not the only one that people buying out 250 feet of lake frontage to put up a monster house.
So in those situations though, right, that's not where we're having the issue, right?
Well, but some of those people feel very entitled to do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, that's kind of a different issue. I guess my question is, the person who trespassed on his neighbor's property, built without a permit, why can't he be whacked?
Yeah.
Rather than change the rules for 800 people,
Why can't his pool be filled in?
why can't his pool be filled in?
So conceptually, right, the pool would have met standards for where it was placed and everything, right? So the fact that it was built without a permit is more of a side note to the greater issues. I think the comments you're making are comments that the planning commission would love to hear, right? So public hearing for this is going to be not next Thursday, it's 2 Thursdays from next Thursday, which is how I work, right? Right.
Here, I'll tell you about the news. I've got it on the agenda.
Oh, no, wait, so this is what we are.
So it's on the 25th?
No, I'm mistaken. It is on the 9th is our next. So the 18th is our next planning commission, and then it's the second Thursday of the month, which would be July 9th.
Mr. Deem,
Yeah.
on the side setbacks. I see a lot of houses, where I'm at, for 5-foot setback, and then we build air conditioners in them, and
Right, mini splits.
many
Hedgerows.
Yeah, all kinds of landscaping, so it ends up only a couple feet, like a path maybe.
What does the fire chief want?
Well, he'd want as much space as possible.
Yeah, realistically.
Realistically, I think realistically, 10 feet is probably what he's looking for.
Perfect answer. I mean, I could certainly justify that. Go talk to the fire chief. He needs to save your life.
And the other thing would be, typically on a 100-foot lot, I think it's a 10-foot one side, 15 the other.
It's 10 and 10.
It used to be 10 on one side, it used to be 25 total, 10 on one side, 15 the other. If you could put a little flexibility in that, maybe 6 foot on one side or something.
I'll just throw this out. On the island, we have SIBO. Backhoe. Call it SIBO. No ideas. The rule is put anything in front of your house you want. But if SIBO can't come through, it's getting ripped out. You've got to be able to get the backhoe through. Seems reasonable for the fire chief. Put anything you want there, till I have to take a backhoe or a bulldozer and push it all into the lake to get a fire truck down there.
Yeah, I think ultimately though, the fire concerns aren't what's driving the discussion, right? It's neighbor concerns.
No, you're right, it's not, but it's a good excuse to pick that rule.
Mike, I think the other side of this thing is even getting all the input in and maybe even modifying it. The concern I have is that used to be, I don't know what's changed recently, I don't know the numbers today, but at one time, that zoning board of appeals meeting was 70% sightline variances. Okay, I remember those days. And the variances went out the window all the time. Oh, my neighbor's got one, I can't, well, then he gets it, the next one gets it. Does even creating all this stuff gonna help if the ZBA doesn't support the planning commission's position when they create the thing? Because everybody thinks there's an exception.
So. Conceptually, right, I feel that when an ordinance first goes into effect, that it is stronger, well, the enforcement is much stronger. Right, and as time goes on without review, that's when you start getting the, well, it's not that bad, is it, you know, and that creep starts happening, you know, and periodic review and strengthening of the ordinances helps keep that philosophy away.
Yeah. I mean, I like I mean, I personally, and I go bigger last, so I don't have a problem with people that do, but logically to me, to save the neighbors thing and create the opportunity to be better would be the thing in the future, but I don't want to destroy any current person, so they do grandfather them in. It does negate probably their flexibility when it comes to trying to do something else to expand or improve their property in the current condition. With the current lots. And I think that's why people are buying up multiple lots. And by default, in order to get something, and of course they have to in today's world with our ordinance we got on here now, you gotta have 100 foot of frontage or you can't even be a riparian lot.
Again, George, I apologize, but nobody can hear you.
I'm sorry about that. Slid back. So, I mean, there's people on the lake, on this lake, I mean, which is pretty much all. The only way you can get in a prairie lot on a non-conforming lot today is by multiple non-conforming lots next to one another and get it 100 foot. You can use the lake theory. So, I mean, it's all changing regardless. And whether or not you force it even more by making the change in the setbacks. If the logic is there to do it to help the neighbors, then I wouldn't be against it personally. So we were just looking for opinions, that's one first.
Did that give you something to work with?
Well, yeah, I think again, right, it would be helpful if, you know, you guys have strong opinions, let the planning commission know. It's not, I don't view this as like a obvious answer to anything, right? And part of the point of, I think for this specific ordinance going up in public comment is, there's a lot of, I don't knows, right? And we need more than just one resident, you know, providing their feedback on this. So throw that out there. And then like we were talking about the decks, you know, you think that you what do you think of the idea, right? That the sightline would be for houses to houses and decks to decks. Is that something that should even, you know, start a discussion, or is that
Seems fair.
So
It seems
right
fair.
now, you're saying the line of sight is foundation to foundation.
correct?
But if you're a new build in between those two and they have decks, you can't build a deck.
Correct.
I mean, to me, it seems logical because they essentially have a sightline variance, but for whatever reason, they're not counting it as a sightline variance.
Depends on when it was built, right?
Well,
You know, that's-
well, I'm saying in the rule,
Yeah.
they have something hanging forward that's more than 30 inches tall, but it's okay here, but it's not okay there. And to your point, I agree, it should all be all one way or the other, especially if, I don't know if especially is the right word, but obviously to your point, if every time that situation comes up, then they have to go to the ZBA and then they probably, I'm guessing, tend to get what they're asking
Yeah,
for.
I think-
kind of like a futile circle of waste of time.
Yes, well, I think the deck issue became one more of, you really, and in theory, doing any sightline variance, as long as you just look at the top level of the normal deck that comes out at the normal level of the main level of the house. And that was always the issue. That's why we always reduced the fences down to whatever the hell it was until you couldn't even put a fence
Yeah,
any further.
that-
once you
that's
got
the other
so
thing,
much
man.
to the water.
Every day I get 30 inches. Who came up with 30 inches? I'm like, hey, man, it is what it is. You know, it's like,
So, but then when the guy puts a deck out, what's happened today, now everybody wants to use their decks more, so everybody puts a grill out, then they put this barbecue pit over here, they got, well, now it becomes a sideline problem. But it's an artificial one to the planning commission or to the zoning board of appeals, because it's really, if it's just a deck, it's here. But the site went away. and
But
they
most
put
of
it
them
out there.
are
Or there's a
basically
roof.
second story, or
Yeah.
their walkouts, it's main levels.
Need to be,
Right.
need to be a limit on the
I,
height.
well, I mean, the topography on front like
Often,
right?
often,
So
though, that's,
happens. It's not the only situation.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the whole deck height off the back of your house,
yeah,
right? Because you know the railings, right? Those go 36 inches, right? So as soon as you get to the point where you need a railing, it's certainly a sightline damage, right? So that's
you know.
So you had one more thing you wanted to talk?
no, that was the third one.
Oh, that was the third one? Okay,
I
okay.
don't like the idea of, well, as close as they're allowing them to get to the water, say, if that one property there that was over where Charlie's cabin was, or wherever that area was.
Yeah.
You could dive from there right into the lake, because that water's deep, right off that guy's deck. That's crazy to me, I don't need, and I'm not the individual, but however that got put into place to allow that is totally wrong in my mind. That should not have ever happened.
I don't know where.
Yeah,
No,
right,
I don't.
Sonora Drive.
Oh, that
right next to, no house down for the.
that happened right before I got here, so
But that if you pulled the sight line across there, they're probably within that, and the sight line has at a minimum, and you could speak to it better, as a minimum, as a gray area, if it is a peninsula cove or something else. So if you're in any undulation of the lake, you can kind of throw the sight line rule away. To an extent.
Well-
You could at least have a stronger fight to throw it away, if you were the one trying to throw it away.
the zoning district, I hate doing that. It's like, well, it's whatever is the most black and white is the answer I try to go with.
Right,
Because then I can defend that a lot easier than saying, well, it was right.
but they put that in that ordinance, which
Yeah.
makes it hard. You know, if I'm the guy saying, no, I want it, it makes it harder for you to say no, because the wording in that ordinance says if you're in a peninsula cove or whatever, yeah, no, it's not as black and white. It's not as straightforward.
I agree. I agree with that 100%.
I want to let everybody know something else. The Wildlife Committee that we've been working with Mike on the beach project, that is not being scrapped. So I got some information that we thought that it was being scrapped. It is not. They have decided to go with an alternate solution until all of the bids come in for the beach project, and to see if that's still something that they'll do. What they decided to do, talk about the signal thing.
So this happened when I wasn't there. So
That is
so there is an orange amber light that is down on the beach right by where the sand is, and another one in the parking lot over here. Supposedly it's supposed to flash in a way that it deters geese.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, well, actually, it is guaranteed, right? So we have a 6-month money back guarantee, and if it doesn't work, we can return it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of what the thought process was, right? Like, well, all right, even if it is snake oil, we'll get our money back, and we'll move forward with the landscape plan that is out the bid. So we put it out, I guess, on Friday. So I noticed it on Monday. So we're keeping an eye every time we walk in the break room. We're taking a look out there.
Why
is one in the
parking
Are you seeing geese?
Having issues. They're trying to signal in for helicopters.
Yeah, no, that's what they recommended. Yeah, look, I wasn't at that meeting. That was the they said you should do 2 and this and this, and I'm like, all right, we'll try it, and I will say this, there's no geese today, but you know, I don't know if there's geese elsewhere, they're just not. But we are keeping an eye out, and
If anyone's interested in looking it up, Dan Daniels, it's called Away with Geese. And the thinking is, or the knowledge is that geese sleep with one eye open and they don't like the light. So you can look it up, but your project has not been scrapped.
sometimes, you know, you have to try the alternates and let them fail before, you know, you come up with the appropriate solution.
Yeah.
They did put out an RFP.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was one out. I actually turned in our bid today, so
So
I might probably get thrown in the garbage can now, but.
we wanted, our goal was to make sure that the beach had a way of being clean. And if this is a way to keep the crap off the beach.
But I will say, you at least entertaining a long enough conversation to inform me and others that has been that way since 2022 is huge. Because I tried having a conversation and John just shuts you down with one word answers. And it's like, so for you to at least entertain a longer conversation to explain that is extremely.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like that, we're trying to improve our communication, right? And I know it's not been the best, right? I've been here 7 years, right? It's the first time I've been to one of your meetings, right? It's realistically, probably should have been here at least once a year, right? You know, but
We're nice people.
right.
You're on our guest list now.
But right, I'm here now, right? And so
That's all we can do. Yep.
every comment informs our next decision, right? And I want you, we're listening, right? We may not always agree on things, but we are listening. We don't move fast until we move fast, and we don't move fast in the way people want us to move fast, and we move slow in ways where people don't want us to move slow, but unfortunately, that's just how government works. But we're listening, right? And we want to listen more. So, you know, I'm not gonna wait another 7 years before I come in front of you guys, right? You know, and quarterly, right? That's probably reasonable. If you guys informed about what's going on.
Especially with this going on, that's probably appropriate.
Yep. So.
Well, we'll continue to be at the meetings, and it's nice because Mike and I talk after the meetings and sometimes before the meetings, just on things that are going on, so. It's really informative. It's great.
We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.